might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales, woo! Every day they're out there making DuckTales, woo! Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell, turtle power.
So just sit back and relax, you'll laugh in the laughs, we're Animaniacs.
How nostalgic did that feel? If you grew up in the 90s, you probably had a strong recognition of one of those intro theme songs, and it probably transported you back to childhood. But why do these shows make us feel so nostalgic? How is it that we can just hear that intro and it instantly transports us back? My name's Erin, I'm a therapist, and I love analyzing all things pop culture. I'm going to break down the psychology of nostalgia and why 90s cartoons in particular really hit us in the feels. We're going to look at how nostalgia impacts the brain, how these cartoons were made specifically so that we can feel really connected to them, and how actually rewatching these cartoons today actually can help our mental health. I'm wearing my best 90s t-shirt and I've got a cold brew, so cheers, come along, let's get into it. Let's start off the bat with nostalgia itself. What is it? Why do we feel it? And it's one of those things that when we feel it, we know that we're feeling it, right? It's such a particular feeling. Nostalgia is one of those emotions that's really complex. You know what it is when you feel it, but sometimes it's really hard to describe it as a whole. Nostalgia includes feelings of often bittersweetness, of wanting and longing for the past, but being in the present. And it can even include feelings of memory and longing and especially comfort. There's studies that actually show when we experience the feelings of nostalgia, it hits our reward center in our brain and releases dopamine. So on some level, we are wired to want to feel nostalgic. But nostalgia isn't just about remembering or reminiscing. It's bigger and larger than that and serves a greater purpose in our brains. When we feel stressed or overwhelmed or stuck even, our brains really long for simpler times or times when we felt comfort and reliability. So we seek out nostalgia. And when I keep talking about nostalgia, I keep talking about memory and how it's such a huge part of nostalgia. And nostalgia can't exist without having experienced it in the past. And this is why it's so impactful, is because we encode memories differently as children. This is why childhood trauma is so impactful. This is why it takes a long time to overcome that, or it can really affect people developmentally. It's the same thing. We encode and we experience things in a different way as children than we do as adults. So that's why when we watch things as kids or we experience really great things or really terrible things, they sit with us in such a different way. And research actually suggests that between the ages of 10 and 30, you experience what's called a reminiscence bump, which is where you start to reminisce on things during those time frames, which is why our childhood and adolescent years have such impact on our development, on our memories, and who we become as people. So when we hear a theme song from the past, like Pokemon, or we see a clip of Courage the Cowardly Dog, our brain isn't really calling just a show. Our brain is pulling up an entire past emotional landscape. But sometimes we see something from our childhood, and it still does not elicit the same feelings of nostalgia that these 90s cartoons shows elicit in us. The first reason I think that 90s cartoons in particular hit so hard is the hand-drawn animation. The color palettes of shows like Doug or Rugrats or Recess are really warm and inviting and make us feel comfortable when we're watching them. But if you compare that warm color palette and hand-drawn animation feel to current digital shows, yes, they are more polished, but it is just lacking that cozy comfort. Whenever I would watch shows, I would always be excited to see a character's bedroom because in particular, it's so simple. A lot of the animation is very simple. The backgrounds stay pretty consistent. And so I'd get so excited to be like, oh my gosh, I want my room to look that simple or that clean. And it was just like comforting to watch. Another reason that 90s shows in particular are so nostalgic is the theme songs. And I already alluded to this in my intro. Why do you think that you can remember the entire DuckTales intro, but you cannot remember what you had for dinner 2 or 3 nights ago. It's always astounding to me how many song lyrics I actually have stored in my brain. Like, I'm never actively thinking about them, and there's so many other things that I feel like I could use my memory for. But of course, when a song comes on, those song lyrics come rushing forward, and I'm like, wow, apparently I know this entire song. And that's because music and memory are super intertwined and deeply linked. Whenever you hear music, you're activating your hippocampus, which is a core part of memory creation and memory storage. So that's why music in particular, or theme songs for that matter, stick in our brain in a different way than just our grocery list would. And 90s cartoons has some of the most iconic theme songs.
It's you and me.
Gotta Catch 'Em All, it's ingrained in pop culture.
Every day when you're walking down the street.
Instantly recognizable.
Seatbelts, everyone! Please let this be a normal field trip. With a friend? No way!
Who didn't love Miss Frizzle's Wild Adventures? High energy, action-packed, unforgettable. These theme songs were meant to be earworms. Short, simple, and packed with emotion. And it's why, decades later, we still hum them without even thinking about it. And 90s cartoons also had this very relatable, yet super imaginative storytelling to them. They really struck this balance between very relatable childhood problems while also creating this amazing imaginative landscape. They reflected childhood struggles while also allowing us to escape into fun, exaggerated worlds. Hey Arnold tackled deep topics like loneliness or urban life or family struggles while still keeping things fun. Doug perfectly captured the awkwardness of growing up. Rugrats was unique in the sense that it saw the world through a child's eyes while also making the ordinary feel so magical. Recess showed school politics as an epic social adventure. And DuckTales, one of my favorites, really emphasized and showed the idea of adventure. And even though these shows were obviously made for kids, there's so many layers of truth to them that really stuck with us when we were kids that we carried into adulthood, making them even more impactful than they already are. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how the audio of these shows also differs from the audio of current day television. My husband's an audio engineer, and when I pointed out this idea of this video to him, the first thing he said is, oh, another point that makes these shows so great is the audio is different. So he explained to me that shows in the 90s were all analog. So what that means is they would record all the audio onto tapes and then transfer it onto the cartoons. Whereas all audio today for digital shows is obviously done digitally on ones and zeros. So even the audio has this very nostalgic feel to it. It's almost the same as listening to a song on a vinyl record versus a song on your phone. They both produce different feelings internally, especially because the vinyl produces this idea of coziness and comfort, much like the audio being recorded on tape did. So why do we still seek nostalgia as adults? Like, what does it actually do for us to have these feelings of great memory and excitement about the past? Turns out, it's actually really great for our mental health. Nostalgia can be used as a coping mechanism in a way to emotionally regulate. When we're in seasons that feel overwhelming or incredibly anxiety-ridden, there is something internal in us that wants to retreat back to a time of simplicity and comfort. Thus, we seek out nostalgia. And watching these cartoons can create a temporary space of reprieve from the world, from worrying about your kids or worrying about your grades or feeling like the economy is going to burn America down. Whatever it might be, getting to step back into time and remember when you felt comfortable and didn't have a care in the world is really therapeutic. In fact, there's actually a lot of research that shows nostalgia can reduce anxiety while increasing your social connectedness. And rewatching these old cartoons reinforces a sense of identity and reminds us of who we are at certain points in life. Like, if you resonated with Doug, maybe you were the shy kid, or maybe Dexter's Lab really helped you embrace your sense of imagination, or maybe Animaniacs spoke to you because you were the class clown. Whatever it was, there was something in these shows that we internally connected with that pushed our identity forward and helped create a sense of belonging. And I think that's why a lot of parents today are making movement towards showing their kids these old 90s cartoons, because they're less overstimulating, they resonate with them more, and they really simplified the problems that kids should actually be experiencing nowadays. And I think that's just proof to how powerful these shows really were. The last point I want to make about why 90s cartoons feel so particularly nostalgic is because it was a collective nostalgia. Unlike today, where there's 8 million streaming services and we can just pick and choose what we want to watch when we want to watch, the 90s cartoons era was very structured. It came on at a certain time during a certain day of the week, such as Saturday morning cartoons. So everybody gets together and they get to talk about the same show in the same episode because that's what everyone just watched. This shared experience of the 90s shows is why people still talk about them today and still bond over them today. I think it's also a reason that there are 8 million SpongeBob memes out there that literally you can find for any given situation in current day culture. So next time you find yourself driven to rewatch an episode of DuckTales, or you feel yourself getting emotional over Powerpuff Girls, know that it's not just nostalgia, it's also a form of self-care. 90s cartoons remind us of the joy of childhood, the friendships we made, and the lessons we learned. And in a world that often feels too fast, too overwhelming, and too complicated, maybe a little bit of nostalgia is just what we need. If you enjoyed this deep dive into nostalgia and pop culture, then you would love my channel. Any support is so appreciated. A like, a subscribe, a comment. I love reading comments, and I know that there's 90s cartoons that I totally forgot to mention or just didn't have time to mention. So leave a comment. You let me know what was your 90s cartoon and why did you resonate with it. Thanks for tagging along. I can't wait to keep growing my channel, and I will see you all soon.